Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm MrTieDye and this is my first video in 2020. So we're going to kick this one off with a heart inside of a star. So I'd had a request for this a while back and I finally got around to making this one. So what I did is I'm starting with a t-shirt that's been soaked in soda ash. It's been spun out so it's barely damp. Then I turned it inside out and centered it by tucking one sleeve into the other, and then that way I could pull just the front of the t-shirt forward. The back is back here, and then the two sleeves are tucked inside each other. But that way I can work on just the front of the tee. And I do have a video. I'll post a link to that down in the description box below. So let's get started here. So the first thing I do for this design here is I'm going to draw a circle, and I'm starting, let's see, about 11 inches down from the collar here. And what I'm going to do is just draw a circle around this center point. The way I like to draw a circle is I just tie a string onto a washable marker. And this one here is Crazy Art. It's a washable marker. I don't know if that's, anyway. The other brand that I've used is Crayola. So both of those tend to wash out pretty good. So what I'm going to do is draw a circle to start with. So I'm just going to put my finger down here on this center point here that, like I say, is 11 inches down from the top. You can pick whatever distance, but I just wanted to have a nice distance for my circle so that I could have the star around it. We'll see that at the end here. Anyway, so I'm going to mark this out. I had another line down here that will give me about a 12-inch circle. So I'm just going to pinch that under my fingernail, and then I'm just going to draw this circle on here, a half circle. That just makes a nice smooth way to draw a circle on your design. Once I have that done, now I'm going to center a little heart in the middle of that circle here and draw that one on. Okay, now the next thing that I'm going to do is use a protractor, and I'm going to draw some lines on here at 20-degree intervals. So this one here is at 160, 140, and so on around the circle here, every 20 degrees. Just a second, let me get my yardstick. And we're going to continue those lines out now. So I'm just going to line up here with my center point and then just extend these out just past the circle. Once I have those drawn out, now what we're going to do is fold these up. The heart I'm going to fold last. I'm going to fold the star part first, and that's what all of these lines are for. So what I'm going to do is pick up this first line, and I'm going to fold it right here, and so I'm laying this line right here, and this here is going to be in my crease there. So, and then this here is the center point down here, so you can just use that as a guideline to line that up. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pick that one up. This here is going to be my fold line, and I'm going to lay this line right there. Do that again. So I'm going to pick that up, and what I'm doing is I'm just picking up all the layers here, so you can even reach underneath there. Pick that up and pinch this under. That way the line you drew there is right on top of that crease. And then, like I say, this one here is going to be in this back crease here. So we'll move that over one more. And you just have to kind of smooth the shirt out the best that you can. It's going to kind of bunch up over here in these layers. But we'll worry about that in just a second. Right now, we want to finish folding this. And then fold that last one over there. And then I can see my little circle line right here, so I'm just going to draw that in. And that's just really for a guidance here, we're not folding that line there. Okay, so now I'm going to turn this around here. And remember, we have the heart right in the point of the star here, or what's going to be the star. So right now we have just a circle, and what I'm going to do is draw a couple lines on here, and I'm starting, let's see, the heart is about right here, and I'm going to start a few inches up from that just to give me a little bit of a gap so that I can open that up and fold it. If you come too close to the heart down here, you won't be able to actually fold that. So I'm giving myself about 3 fingers width here, about 2.5 inches or so, and I'm going to draw a steep line. Let's get that out of the way. And you don't have to draw a line on here. This here is, I'm doing this mostly for the video so you can kind of see what I'm folding here. And I'm folding another one up. And what this is going to do, since I have this point pointed towards the collar here, that means that the star is going to have a point coming up at your neck here. If you pointed it up this other direction here, then you would have a point on either side coming up, so the star would be upside down. So you can choose which direction you want the star to face. If you want the point to be up, then you have to point your thing towards your collar to get that point in there. So I hope that made sense. So these are the 2 lines that we're going to fold along here, and then we're going to use sinew to tie this. So I have my sinew, and I got one of these sinew dowels from Nikolai Savin. These things are excellent, and I do have a video on how I use sinew and kite string, and I kind of demo the puller a little bit more there. Anyways, so what I'm going to do is just do a little accordion fold right here. I mean, there's only 2 folds, but that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to tie this line on there. And you got to keep that nice steep angle in there. If you're going straight across, you're going to get circles. So you need to go straight up if you want the star points. Not straight up, but up at that steep angle. So I wrap it around a couple times, and I'm just kind of holding it there and pulling that just a little bit tight. And then I'm going to wrap it a few more times and pull it really tight. And the sinew puller, that really helps because it gives you a nice firm grip on your sinew, and you can pull that. The other way that you can do it is reach underneath, have the line coming underneath there. And when I do that, I have the sinew coming down on the table side so that when I'm pulling, I'm not pulling the sinew up into my hand. But then you can grab your t-shirt right here with the sinew coming out, and you can pull away from yourself or pull the shirt towards you. The main thing you don't want to do is pull where you have the thing coming up towards your face, because if you happen to break this sinew line, then you're going to punch yourself in the face, and trust me, that's no fun. So, okay, I guess I can leave that tied. So the next thing I'm going to do is tie this other star up here, other point. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do the accordion folds. And then just bring that sinew over. And I just have it kind of loosely tucked here. I'm going to pull that a couple times just to take some of the tension out and squeeze it down a little bit. So that kind of tightens it up. And then I wrap it a few more times. And then I pull it tight. And you can kind of feel it lock in when you get it nice and pulled tight there. Now, what we're going to do is open this heart back up and get that folded. So now I have the heart, and like I say, it's in kind of a little pocket here, but that'll allow me to fold that. Let's see if we can zoom in just a little bit. So I have my line, so I'm going to do just little tiny accordion folds here. I'm going to squeeze that together tightly there, and then like I say, I wrap that around a couple times, and I just pull just enough to take some of the tension or some of the extra tension or fabric, squeeze that down a little bit, compress it. Can't talk today. Once I get that done, then I'm just going to hold that, pull that nice and tight, and then we'll cut that off of there. Now the rest of this t-shirt, you can kind of open that back up and scrunch that however you like. The sleeves are already tucked inside themselves here. The other option you can do is, if you folded these up really nice and neat here, you could stack them up and you could continue this star pattern and go all the way up the t-shirt with these sharp diagonal lines going up and tie just the whole shirt into a star pattern. But like I say, I'm going to go ahead and just scrunch this. So I'm just opening these creases back up, all of these ones that we made to fold the star shape, just the best that I can. I scrunch the sleeves in their armhole here. And then I'm going to use kite string to tie this up, but you could also use rubber bands. You could use the sinew, but the sinew is more expensive than kite string, so I just prefer to use kite string to tie something up like this if I'm just doing it loosely. The sinew I mostly use when I'm trying to tie something up very tightly, or I want the white lines to show up. That's the reasons I use the sinew, and that's all explained in my kite string or sinew video also. I'll put a link to that down in the description box. And the other thing is, you can straighten this out if you want, where the heart is, and you can fold that up and you can tie another diagonal shape on there now that you have the heart all tied up. And I think that's what we'll do here. I don't have this exactly lined up, all my folds, but we can refold some of those in there. Okay. So I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just going to go up at an angle here. And pull that up tight. This one here is a little trickier because the fabric isn't as wide here to do the accordion folds. So the other thing, you can just scrunch this part up. You don't have to tie this other star shape in it. But what the heck. Okay, so that part is done. I'm going to cut this extra little tail off so I don't get confused. I know that these are my 3 unwrapping tails. And now what I'm going to do, since I used the sinew and I have many layers here, is I'm going to let this sit and dry for a few days, and then we'll come back and get this dyed. So I'll be back when this is ready. we're back to put some color on this thing. I've let it sit for a few days and it's all dry now, so I'm gonna start adding color. Remember now, this first one down here is the heart, and then these are my different star shapes. So I'm gonna dye the heart in red. And the other thing is, when you let something dry, sometimes the dye will want to roll off, but it doesn't always. So I like to at least give it a test and see if it's going to roll off. And in this case, it doesn't look like it's going to, so I'm just going to go ahead and apply it. But if the dye did want to just roll off rather than soak in, then I do have my soda ash in a spray bottle here, and I just give it a quick little mist here, and that will then break the surface tension and allow the dye to soak in. But in this case, it seems to be doing just fine without spraying, so. Well, I guess not in all the places. So I'm just going to go ahead and give it just a little bit of a mist. It worked, the first few drops worked, but a couple of them wanted to roll around, so I'll just go ahead and spray it. And then we can go ahead and start getting color put on this. Oh, let me get some gloves on. Okay. Yeah, I put gloves on because sometimes it's easier when you're squirting some of this dye on to just give it a squeeze to move it around in there. So, I have the heart all dyed in red, and then I'm going to move out in other fire colors here. So I'm going with lemon yellow for my next star. Since I got red on my fingers, I'll make sure to wipe that off before I squeeze the yellow part here. Sometimes it's the adding a little bit of pressure to the t-shirt or the fabric to get the dye to move into some of the deeper layers. So I'll add some dye and then just squeeze it with my finger. The other thing you can do, I have a cuticle pusher, and I'll just push on that. And sometimes I can push on it. Let's zoom in just a bit here. I can push and I can see that there's no dye welling up around this here, so that tells me that just it could use a little bit of extra dye. I like to see just a little bit of moisture well up when I push on here. Well, now I got a lot, but that's kind of how I like to see my star, although I did push a little bit too hard and it squirted underneath my line here. But I'm going to put orange in that spot, so I'm not too worried about it. So as I squeeze this, sometimes I can see the dye well up a little bit, and then it'll slowly go away. And as I release the pressure, then it also will want to just soak right down in there. So a little bit of pressure. The other thing you can do, I have a pair of channel lock pliers. Sometimes I'll use that if I have really big areas. I'll just clamp down on it, and that way you can just squeeze that dye down inside, and that gives you better saturation there. Also, just putting the dye on and then letting it sit, I can come back to this in 10 minutes and add another coat of dye, and it'll just keep soaking in. So there's lots of different methods for getting your saturation level correct. And then this here is fuchsia that I've just watered down just a little bit, so it'll be a little bit lighter of a pink than the full-on fuchsia. Anytime I can open up any of these cracks here, and since I folded this here kind of fan foldy, that gives me an area where I can open some of those cracks up, and that just allows me to then squirt dye directly down inside here, and that's also going to help my saturation if I can get the dye more into the middle of the design. Can't always open up the folds, but whenever you can, it's a good idea just to open them up and squirt some dye in there. And then that way when you give it a squeeze, you can move that dye around also that's down in the middle. And this is one nice thing about doing the fan folding rather than the airplane folding, because it does give you these stacked layers like this where you can open those up some. I think that's good for now. I'll probably come back and add a little bit more to those, but I'm going to work on the rest of the t-shirt and get some dye going in there. And then I'll come back and I'll add a little bit more dye to all of my heart and the star areas here. So we'll go into fast forward mode here as I dye this here. I'm just going to use 2 shades of purple. I have plum that I mix up regular strength, and then I have light purple that I put just 1/4 of plum in the bottom and filled the rest of this up with water. So that's how I did this light purple. And you can adjust just how dark it is just by how much full strength dye you add and how much water. So you can change that and get lighter and darker shades of purple or whatever other colors you're working with. A little bit more dye to each of these sections here, just to make sure we're good and saturated. I squeezed them pretty good, and I don't think it had any white spots left down in there, but like I say, it's always nice to just add just a little bit more so it can soak in there. Oh yeah, I do see some white fibers sticking up here, and the white fibers sticking up from the fabric a lot of time will indicate that there's white spots down inside, or at least a not fully saturated spot. Alright, so I'm going to let this batch for 48 hours and I'll have the results for you here in just a couple seconds.